Welcome back to Demystifying Cybersecurity. This is a podcast where we unpack real world protection strategies for high risk industries like banking, casino gaming, and maritime operations. I'm Carole Crawford. I'm the founder and president of the Saturn Partners. And today I'm going solo to talk about two topics that are generating a lot of buzz, but there's also a lot of confusion. And the two topics are blockchain and quantum computing. These are not just theoretical concepts anymore. They're actively shaping the future of how we manage digital trust, as well as encryption and risk in these highly regulated environments. So, in this episode, I want to cut through the hype, unpack what's real and what's misunderstood, and what security leaders actually need to be thinking about right now. It's not anything that's very well known across the board, as I have found when looking to provide speaking opportunities to enlighten our industries. And I think it's just because there's a lot of overwhelming activities going on regarding AI, and people just haven't gotten to this yet. So this is very important. And unpacking the hype is really top of the list because there's so much confusion from what I've been hearing. So whether you're leading cybersecurity for a regional or community bank, or you're overseeing surveillance infrastructure at a casino, or managing compliance on the maritime side, this conversation is for you. So let's dive in. You probably heard the headlines: blockchain is the future, quantum will break the internet. But here's the truth: it's a lot of marketing noise by and large, a lot of fear, and a lot of uncertainty. Today, I want to look at what these technologies actually mean for real-world cybersecurity programs, not in the year 2040, but for right now in 2026. So what risks are real? And what strategies can we use to stay ahead? Also, how do you plan for a future that's still unfolding? What risks are real and what's happening in the front lines is something that we will have to take a closer look at another podcast. But this is a basic overview just to update you on what's the latest things are in the development of these technologies. So what we're talking about here in terms, when I say blockchain and quantum computing, examining the scenario now and coming to a theater near you, so to speak, of how we will have to address the issue of quantum computers versus the weapons we had in our arsenal, both now and down the road. So first, we will look at the terms. Blockchain and QC, or quantum computing, where it helps, where the risks are, and the definition of these technologies, even though we at Saturn work with banks, maritime, casino, and even cyber insurance clients. These new technologies will also touch these industries as well as others in different and dramatic ways. And yeah, quantum computing and blockchain are still mystifying to even principals in our different vertical specialties. Like AI, which we know now has, as a technology, solid streamlining and efficiency improvement aspects, we know there is always many of the risks that don't get touched upon. As I've always said about change, humans have a tendency to fight it and stay with what's comfortable. But the avalanche of new AI applications active and at work in real life corporate and private scenarios forced pretty much everybody to stare it in the face, so to speak, and to deal with it. Just like AI, QC and blockchain technology are almost here. And by the way, blockchain in many industries has been here a while, but quantum computing is the latest, what I would call boogeyman, and keeping it and management executives up at night, or will be in the future. So we'll go into basics here of both and define these. This podcast is not for the purely technical audience. Rather, it is to help educate and answer questions about these two that, well, some of it, and even cyber professionals, don't want to admit how little that they know about them. So we will start with the blockchain. Blockchain is not just crypto. It's really important to think digital integrity, tamper-evident logs, traceable records, things like that. There's areas where it will help, areas where it's risky, and here are some of those. Where it helps, it's very good at helping logging and audit trails. Additionally, secure identities like zero trust support, secure digital identities. Also, supply chain visibility in both OT and Internet of Things networks. So it can be a great help there. It will be a great help there. Where it's risky, you need to look at smart contracts, often poorly secured, and, quote, immutable, unquote, does not mean invulnerable. Thirdly, lack of clarity on governance, who controls the ledger. So that's where a lot of the confusion and the ignorance comes in, because it's coming at us fast enough to where, after reeling and getting through everything with AI and getting balanced and learning to live with those risks, here's another one coming around the corner. Some example scenarios would be casinos considering blockchain-based slot verification, but also maritime logistics, exploring ledger-based cargo tracing. For example, one client assumed blockchain meant that their data could not be hacked. That is not how it works. The code is still vulnerable. What a definition is from AI of blockchain technology is decentralized, distributed, and an immutable digital ledger used to securely record transactions across a network of computers. It uses cryptographic hashing to link data blocks chronologically, ensuring the transparency and tampering resistance without relying on a central authority. Key characteristics and components we have here, there are a few. First of all, decentralized ledger. So instead of a single centralized database, information is shared among nodes, computers, in a peer-to-peer network. Then we have immutability. Once data is recorded and verified, it is nearly impossible to change or delete. Cryptographic security. Each block contains a unique cryptographic identifier, a hash, a timestamp, and the hash of the previous block, creating a secure chain. Then we have consensus mechanism. So in order to add new data, a majority of the nodes in the network must agree that the transaction is valid. And then there's transparency. Participants can view and track transactions, providing a single source of truth. So how does this work? Well, when a transaction occurs, it is combined with others into a block. This block is sent to every node in the network for validation. Once validated, the block is added to the existing chain, and all participants update their records. Next, we go to the types of blockchains. First of all, we have public blockchains. Permissionless, fully decentralized networks accessible to anyone, in other words, like Bitcoin. Then you have private blockchains. Now, we're talking about restricted networks, often used by businesses where membership is controlled. Lastly, we have consortium and hybrid. These are a combination of public and private, typically used for specific industry needs. So beyond cryptocurrencies, this technology is utilized for supply chain tracking, smart contracts, and secure data storage. Next, we go on to quantum computing and encryption threats. And this is nothing that anybody likes to hear, but as I've always said, for what I think it's called, forearmed is forewarned, or something like that. Way back. Maybe Benjamin Franklin said that. I don't know. Anyway, so we have some points here that we need to look at. Quantum computing threatens encryption at the core. So RSA, ECC, and beyond this. There's also something that needs to be looked at called Shor's algorithm. That's SHOR, Shor's algorithm, and why it matters. A big threat that's going on now with a lot of the bad guys that's already happening is the term harvest now and decrypt later. It is a reality. Attackers are saving encrypted traffic now to break later. In other words, let's put them in a carton storage until we can get a chance to break these apart when the time comes. Now, why does this matter for your industry? Well, we'll start with 3 different industries that we work with here. For banks, you're talking about long-term customer records and contracts, loans, things like that. If you're a casino, you're looking at biometrics, customer profiles, surveillance data. With ports, you've got satellite comms, SCADA systems, encrypted supply chain data, etc. Quite a bit more. What to do now? Well, there's going to be plenty that you can do to prepare, but what to do now? First of all, start by doing an inventory of your crypto stack, which means identifying RSA, ECC use, etc. Ask vendors also if they're aligned with NIST's post-quantum cryptography PQC. And then understand the new NSA CNSA 2.0 suite for those of you working in government-adjacent sectors under the DoD. So, at this point, what I always say is that quantum is not a fire to put out today, but it is a storm you can see on the horizon. Your security posture should reflect that. One thing we don't want to be is caught with our drawers down, so to speak, when we have the time to start working on these things as we wander through the maze of AI and other things that we've had to, deal with to streamline but sometimes shake up our businesses already. So what should security leaders do now? One thing is really important is don't get caught up in hype. Focus on building a resilient posture. Some questions you want to ask yourselves internally. One would be, are our current vendors planning for PQC? Is our long-term data secure against future decryption? And could we test blockchain internally? In other words, for audit logs without high risk. So this should be followed by these tactical next steps. Add PQC. Add PQC questions to vendor RFIs. Run tabletop exercises around encryption failure. This is different than probably many of the IRP tests that you've done in the past, but we have to hit at what the most vulnerable areas are. And then begin building awareness inside your organization. Now, this is leadership's responsibility too. So basically, you don't need to master quantum physics. You need to lead your organization with smarter questions and earlier actions. In other words, using a phrase I use all the time, shutting the barn door after the cow has left. This is one area you don't want to be in that position. So I want to thank you for tuning into this solo episode of Demystifying Cybersecurity. We will come back to these topics in the next podcast of Demystifying Cybersecurity, digging deeper into these topics. If you found this helpful, I encourage you to subscribe, share with a colleague, or leave a review. And if your organization needs help navigating emerging risks like blockchain and quantum, or just building a stronger cybersecurity program, you can always count on us since 2001, and you can find us at www.saturnpartners.com. Until next time, stay on top of new developments, stay skeptical, and stay vigilant.